Welcome everyone to Tabletop Assault. I'm David.
I'm Ross.
And today we're going to do a really quick sort of recap and overview of what you will have seen is the announcement for the brand new points update for Warhammer 40k 9th edition. This is an points overview of all the armies and factions that are currently in play at the moment. So your Munitorum Field Manual 2022 Mark II is in front of you. You can see here, we're going to go through all the factions as you see in this order. Although Forge World, I think, Ross, we're going to maybe lightly touch on, if at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the good summary to say in Forge World is not much has changed except some Lord of Wars went down about 50 points. So, yeah, that's kind of Forge World summarised.
Okay, perfect. Excellent.
More changes there, but that's about the gist of it.
Cool. So, I know this is probably one of the most hotly anticipated updates of the year is when points changes kick in, because it also shows you not just, what has gone up, what's gone down, but the kind of trends that are in place for certain types of units like Primarchs, vehicles, that sort of thing. So, starting off, we have the Space Marines. Now, Space Marines will break down into their certain factions. If there's anything that we don't focus on army-wise, we do apologise. We don't really have time to go through every unit. And I will say a big thank you to Ross that's kindly sort of pinpointed out some key updates from the points changes that we're going to touch on. Ross, if I hand over to you, do you actually want to tackle Space Marines, not the individual factions, but just Space Marines to start with?
Oh, as the only person I think in the channel that's never played Space Marines, fair enough, why not? I'll cover them.
It's your notes.
So, they are my notes. I did cover kind of everything then in that side. So when it came to Space Marines, most of it appeared to be largely the same. The main area I saw changes were some of the heavy vehicles. So in your heavy supports, your Land Raiders sort of changed points, only very slightly. Gladiator, Repulsor, all went down. And I think that's from a general trend where you see vehicles, we did kind of expect them to struggle when they didn't have the core keywords, and maybe that's why they've went down points again. Outriders went up in points because I think, again, mobility is very important to this edition, and Outriders have proved quite popular. They've not been huge swing changes, but enough that I did note them down.
Okay. Gladiators as well, sort of getting updated ever so slightly. 50
yes,
points.
Gladiators, Land Raiders, Repulsors, they were all the sort of heavier section that I thought you saw a bit of point changes there.
Obviously, we're going to just be riffing off some rumours that are circulating on Land Raiders. This is by no means this is happening, but the points changes going down, and we've seen some announcements in the leaks today about the toughness value of Land Raiders, so that points factor coming in might make that unit a lot more valuable again.
Chaos Space Marines, which their points are the new Codex ones because they've got the new units in this, so they've taken that into account. Why is the Chaos Land Raider different points to the Space Marine ones? Who will ever know?
Yeah.
But that's observant from this. There's a 20-point difference between Chaos Space Marine Land Raider and Space Marine Land Raider.
Well, a wee thing to look out for later on in the week, guys. Land Raiders, definitely.
All the rumour mills,
Follow the trail. I'll kick on to what I hate the most, which is Smurfs, because it feels only fit, and I should probably touch on these guys.
Sure.
2 key points. Marneus Calgar is going down in points, 210 to 180. Don't really know how I feel about that. I feel all Ultramarines should be about 1,000 points per model and make them unplayable, but that's just my bias. But you know what? I think that brings him in line with sort of other characters of his ilk, Kaldor Draco and things like that. So it sounds pretty fair. He's meant to be on a level with those sort of guys. The big one for me, though, was Guilliman, Rowboat Guilliman, coming down from 380 to 300 points. I need to be honest, I actually fought Guilliman fairly recently on the channel against Ross from Wardrop Battle Reports. And Guilliman terrified me, I have to admit it. He was punching above his weight. I think he took out a knight, which... Sure, that still stings a little bit, but it happened, and he was providing a lot of synergy for his army. So much abilities to make your army really kind of work well with your rerolls, etc., and easier to wound. So I don't know by bringing him by 80 points downwards makes it a fair decrease. I believe a decrease is on the cards for him, because I don't think he's at the level of Magnus and Mortarion. But yeah, 300 points. Yeah, I'll see where that lands. I think he might go up in points in the future. 300 sounds a bit cheap.
Sure.
What do you think about that, Ross?
Well, to see a Primarch go down to 300 points, that's an interesting one. Now, to also note, in the Chaos Space Marine side one, Abaddon is 300 points. Now, does that mean a Primarch is the same level as Abaddon? Some people would argue lore-wise, then yeah, because Abaddon is ascendant with the gods, etc. Part of me disagrees with that, but that could be just maybe because Guilliman's... I mean, he's had rules now that have been out since the start, near the start. Well, is his rules part of Space Marines or are they part of Ultramarines? Has he been updated? Has this been not updated since 8th?
I don't know, actually, Ross. I don't know.
So,
you're speaking to a person that tries to distance himself from everything Ultramarines, so...
That's fair, Dave. That's fair. I think it's a large case of, we've now seen so many models updated in 9th in different ways. The Silent King, and what I mean by this is like stellar models as part of the lore. So you've got the Silent King, Mortarion, Magnus, all working in different ways now. And even if Guilliman had been updated in the Space Marine side of it, the Space Marine Codex is coming up for 2 years old, which is like the longest a Space Marine Codex has ever not been updated. So yeah, it's interesting to see him go down a huge amount of points. That's probably one of the big point drops to start with. That's 80 points in one go.
Yeah, fully agree. And again, we're not giving away any spoilers about Abaddon being at 300 points. It's in this release. You guys aren't going to see that.
Just observing he's the same points as Guilliman. Take that if you want,
When you see Chaos Space Marines shortly, you'll see the same points. Alright, I'll just touch on these really quickly and then I'll hand over for some other factions. We've got White Scars and Salamanders. As you can see, guys, we're not really going to touch too much on it because there's very limited sort of updates sort of on the characters as a whole there. So no real notes to mention except for characters are a little bit cheaper. I'll also chime in and say that's the same with Imperial Fists. Not much to kind of go on there. And then finally, I'll take this last one, Black Templars. Again, not much to really point out except for the Primaris Crusader squads.
This is a big one, David.
Is it?
Yeah, so they originally had all their weapons, you had to kind of pay points for the upgrades on it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like power, like everything you were paying points on, and it's just gone. And I feel that's very, very important. I'll just try and bring up the Black Templars one, I'll get it later. The sheer fact that they were like, well, you had to pay for this, and you're mixing and matching, it just felt unorganised, and generally you don't want to be going, well, I'm paying points for this just for the sake of almost feeling like you're paying points. And now they're just all free. You just choose how you want them to be mixed and matched. And that opens up variety for how you play as them just a little bit more. Instead of paying 5 or 10 points here, you're just not.
Crusader squads, got it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see. I'm looking at their data sheet just now. Yeah, I agree, Ross. It is very messy.
They do the exact same thing, and we'll get to the Chaos side for Death Guards, and I feel it was a very important change as well. That's basically the same as this, and it just opens up choices, the way the unit will work. So I don't know Black Templars very well. I've not played them, though if I was to play Space Marines, it'd be one of the ones I would choose, just because I like black armour. And yeah, I felt that one was a big one that people will appreciate. That they're not just spending points for an upgrade just for the sake of it. This just makes it a lot more options, a lot more affordable.
Yeah, I'm not going to count how many weapons were previously upgradable, but there's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is actually quite a few. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, over 10. There's literally over 10, and I'm sure there's a few more. I think I'm up to 15 now.
I think you're looking at the Crusader squad. This is the Primaris Crusader squad. So the Primaris one, it was only about 1, 2. It was things like Power Axes, you're paying 5 points. Power Fist, you're paying 10 points.
6.
Now you're just not paying that 10 points for a Power Fist.
Yeah, I can see here.
And these are things, I don't think it was just like the squad sergeant that was paying it. I think it was other people in the unit. So that can rack up. And I can't speak of that one with as much authority when it comes to Death Guards. The difference I'll let you know in terms of that's real point differences, and it's a similar vein as that.
Thank you very much. We'll skip past the Raven Guard and Iron Hands. Ross, if I can hand over to yourself, what about Blood Angels? What did you spot?
So very minor changes here. The Death Company both the regular one and intercessors, just down 2 points, I believe, each. I think they were from 20 to 18 and 22 to 20, and then Sanguinary Guard 32 to 30. So that was more going down to the infantry route. They were just reducing the points ever so slightly on them. Nothing I would say on that one that really surprised me. One thing I did, and I'm going to jump onto Dark Angels that did surprise me, is Deathwing Knights went down from 47 to 43. Now, why did that surprise me? The main reason is that a few people said that Deathwing Knights might be becoming a little bit of a problem just because of Armour of Contempt. And I suppose when it comes to all these forces, I think a lot of this was written without Armour of Contempt in mind. And I had heard, though I've not played Dark Angels in a long time, is that Deathwing Knights are becoming a little bit of an anvil unit, especially with Armour of Contempt. So going down in points makes me a little bit suspicious, but I don't play Dark Angels, so a little bit suspicious on that one. But really, Armour of Contempt is a beta rule. Is it a beta rule or is it a full rule? I think it's kind of mixed bag at the moment.
It's a mixed bag. I've not seen it. I've seen it being this is how you need to play it, but it's obviously not in any immediate publication. Like, I wish I could say more, but I can't. I don't see any immediate publication. I just see it as a digital publication, as in this is what we'd like you to play.
And I largely agree with it because they kind of did that with Sister Adeptus Sororitas. They did a beta codex, realised some rules really didn't work, and then they fixed it. So I think they're just going, oh, we need to get some better rules other than like bolters and rapid fire if you stay still, and they're going to be throwing that in a lot of power armoured stuff. So I agree with it, but we'll see how that affects points. Deathwing Knights going down I was a little bit surprised by. A little bit.
Alright, cracking on at Death Guard into Space Wolves. There's a lot of changes, but again, the key changes to bring out here is just character drops and points.
Yeah.
Not much more, everything else seems par for the course. But again, as we're going through this video, you guys have this on screen, you can pause the video and have a look at the points, although a link will be down below for the actual official release on Warhammer Community, where you'll get a better publication of it. But we'll move on from Space Wolves into Grey Knights. Okay, so Grey Knights, if I can bring it up. For some reason Grey Knights don't want to come up. There we go. So Grey Knights, key changes, Grandmaster and Dread has stayed the same. I think I said with my Grey Knight Codex review, I actually thought Grandmaster in Dread Knight was actually okay well points. This felt absolutely fine. I was just unhappy that I'm being limited now to how many I can take Dread Knight wise, but that's kind of like how this edition works now. But yeah, I can't really say much more. It's still cheap enough to take. If anything, it should maybe have gone up a little bit in points because it's an incredibly tough unit to shift. And the fact that you can bring so many of them hurts.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that, I'm a bit thankful that it is one per army, well, one per detachment on that one. Absolute solid HQ choice. Simply put, it's probably one of the better HQs, I think, generic ones out there that I think in the game at the moment. So I could have seen it going up in price. It was never a must-take HQ compared to some of the newer stuff we've seen in certain Xenos armies, but it was certainly a solid choice. Yeah. So staying the same means that they're probably quite happy with it. The sheer fact that people aren't seeing it as a must-have, but it is certainly good. So in that regard, they have kept it the same, and I can largely agree with that. I think that's okay. I would maybe have put it up maybe slightly, but I can largely agree with it staying the same. It's not one of those ones like other units where we're like, yeah, it definitely needed to go up. This I could accept.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it needs to be above the 200 point mark.
Oh, it doesn't need to be above the 200
it's
point
where
mark.
It is.
No.
It couldn't be any cheaper than it is, but it could be slightly dearer, and I'd see that.
One thing to keep in mind is a unit that does do shooting, psychic, and combat well.
Yeah.
Well, all three of them. Its only main weakness is that it's obviously targetable, and I feel that's where its points have gone down, taking that into respect, because there's many units that are about the same that do similar, they don't do similar things. They don't do either the combat or the shooting as well. The one I'm thinking of is Araman. He does psychic fantastically better, but doesn't do shooting at all, and yet more points. And the main reason for that is that Araman isn't targetable. He may do psychic unbelievably better and throw out mortal wounds, but he won't shoot anything.
A bit more protection.
He doesn't contribute in that phase.
And then lastly, the wisdoms have gone down in points for some of them, which actually makes sense to me because no one really was taking them prior to this update.
I recently had a look at the wisdoms and I get them, but also didn't get them. They seemed a bit... I've seen a lot of these sort of special unit things and I didn't quite get it, but sure.
There's a couple of codexes that have got these sort of upgrades table done really, really well. The Craftworld one has it, but that's because you have to really take it to get those extra Exarch abilities. So you're kind of forced to take it. I've seen it with the Nids one. The Nids one all seem pretty nice. The Grey Knight one, the Grey Knight one, sorry, seems a bit kind of, this is nice, but no one's really interested. Now they brought the points down, you might start seeing some of them getting fielded now. So
sure, I think a lot of them are one-off abilities, if I'm right.
Yeah, and the only way you're going to make... On you go, Ross.
Sorry. I think they were one-use abilities. I could be really wrong in that. I'm not a Grey Knight player, and I only saw it recently. But when they're one-use abilities, they've got, like, and you're paying points that are similar to other people's stuff that they're using throughout the game, they better be good abilities. Like, they better be step above, because it's only one use.
So bringing it, if you want to make the players start to use something more, one of the easiest way to do that is bring the points down. Make it more accessible and more attractive. And that's one way to do that. So no issues there. Moving on to Adeptus Sororitas. Ross, I'll cover this one because we'll be moving on to your sort of factions next, if that's alright.
Sure.
Adeptus Sororitas, I'll just put up some of the changes there. So ever so slight changes pointed out. Units going down 1 or 2 points a model, and some vehicles 10 to 15 points. So Sororitas players have not really been hit with any hammer of points going up. The points have gone down for some of the stuff, but no major changes to really pull out or draw out there. Moving on though, let's talk about the Custodes. Again, maybe not too much, but Ross, fire away.
No, well, they don't have many data sheets to begin with, but to absolutely no one's surprise, Trajan has gone up a fair bit of points from 160 to 200. Yeah. So that's, what, 20%, give or take, if not more. In fact, more than 25. Is that about 25%? 40 of that, 40, 80, yeah. Yeah. So 25% increase, 200 points. No one's surprised by that at all. But the main thing I'd say in this now is that with HQ choices that have these multiple warlord trait abilities, where they were your sort of go-to because you'd end up with 3 warlord traits, now you're having to play a command point, and I don't know if they've said yet if they've got multiple warlord traits that you have to pay multiple command points. I find that ridiculous if that is the case.
We were discussing that the other day, weren't we? We were discussing that, trying to work that out the other day.
Yeah, it might be mentioned in the book. I haven't seen it yet, but in terms of... you guys have let me know some of the information. I think it's a bit weird that they're even charging you for the first warlord trait. I could see some reasoning behind it, but some things as part of customization and game mechanic. Everyone has warlord traits, everyone has relics. Giving one of each just adds flavour and a bit of customization to the game. Playing command points for it, I wasn't too happy about. And then when you've got a unit, which I want to say clearly part of his points is having 3 extra abilities for warlord traits, and now you're going to have to pay a command point to unlock them, or possibly 3 if I'm wrong in that one, but I don't think I am. I think it has to be only 1. That skirts a bit for me. I'm not 100% sure. If it came to a case of you had to pay a bunch of command points for these abilities on top of his 40-point increase, then I'd be starting to question. Trajan is good, but having 3 extra abilities behind command points is a pain as well.
Yeah. I still think they won't charge you for multiple warlord traits. But I have to also say I agree. I think the Trajan Valoris points increase seems a bit fair.
Yeah.
200 points, he is a beast.
Yeah, he is a beast. As long as there's only 1 command point to really get those abilities. If it's 3 command points, then 180 maybe. Or 1, because you'd maybe pay 1 command point for one of the abilities. Still a beast though, to be fair, though he is foot slogging. Anyway.
Moving on, and Ross, if you don't mind, I'd like to hand it over to you again. Astra Militarum.
So Astra Militarum is an interesting one. Again, actually, this is very similar to the Black Templars, where if you look at the entry they had before for Astra Militarum, infantry squad, you had the upgrade for an autocannon, a bolt pistol, bolt gun, grenade launcher, missile launcher. it's all gone.
Mm.
So that means, by definition, you can get a missile launcher or a heavy bolter or a melta gun. They're all going to be free in your infantry squads.
Looking at it just now, that's crazy.
So yeah, you're getting free heavy weapons and stuff, and I think it's because people just were not taking these at all. And then some people were, but largely people wanted the infantry squad to be absolutely cheap as possible. And so they've kind of gone, look, getting a single missile launcher or a plasma in that squad possibly isn't going to break things. Now, if you've got 10 squads, 600 points, 20 squads, 1,200 points, and you're getting 20 of each of these weapons, might cause problems, but generally they needed to incentivize people, and making them free generally is. So, yeah, I hope you've got some heavy weapon teams and plasma and all that stuff ready, because they have you're going to auto take them in your infantry squad now. It's almost an auto take unless there's something I'm missing. You're not paying points for them anymore, so why wouldn't you take them?
Before we move on to the next Astra point, I want to quickly just step in, because obviously Chaos Space Marines you'll see shortly. So that makes these guys the same points as a cultist.
Yes.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yay! Well, yeah, and this goes in many directions as well.
Same points as a cultist, has a better saving throw, and has a better loadout opportunity, and you're not going to pay for it? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm not going to touch on much more else when it comes to Astra Militarum. Okay. Simply put, we know the Codex is coming. We've seen, they did their official announcement with the new models now, with the daughter of Castling Creed and all that. That's all.
Ursula Creed, I believe she's called.
Ursula Creed. So we are getting new models, and that's usually a sign that Codex is coming down the line.
Yeah.
We know Chaos Space Marines is out this weekend, or pre-orders go out this weekend. And so my bet's in the next couple, Astra Militarum, if you're seeing models, usually means that you're going to get a Codex soon. So there's some changes there, but I think you've just got to outlast less than 6 weeks, and there'll probably be a much more bigger update with their Codex, which they badly need as well.
It's kind of crazy. I'm just sorry. I'm still stuck in my head about the whole cultist and infantry squad comparison. It's right, okay, sure.
Oh, change it. Give it 6 weeks, David. That'll be it, if not less.
6 points, and you're bringing free rocket launchers and free plasma guns. No chance.
Yeah. They went up by 5 points. That makes a difference.
It's not justifying it at all, but that's fine. I get what you're saying. Right.
So on that one, the Codex is coming. I'm not a big talk on that one. Dexis Mechanicus kind of stayed the same. Electric Priest and Ruststalkers went down a point. A bit surprised by Ruststalkers. They've had a new lease of life, because they were very cheap, loads of attack, you move very fast. But the problem is, with a lot of the combat element of Adeptus Mechanicus, they're kind of squishy, so they would die quite easily. So especially Electric Priest, they did have their ignore wounds and stuff, but they were toughness 3, 5 up invul, 5 up ignore, but you just pummeled them with shots and they went down, which is kind of same as them. So they went down a wee bit in points. Imperial Knights, I don't know this one. I think it's largely the same though for Imperial Knights. I had a look at Chaos Knights and nothing had changed, and I think that's mainly due to they probably didn't have enough time between the publishing of them and this to actually update the points.
Yeah. I'll put it on screen anyway, so those that do want to compare the points, you can pause the screen here and you can see the changes from Imperial Knights to what they currently have. And we'll do the same for Inquisition, as you can see here as well. And we'll do it for Chaos Knights as well. But moving into the next section though, Ross, I think it's probably about time that we sort of skip ahead to Chaos Space Marines. Now, we will also say this with a subtle caveat. The new Codex is not out. It's up for pre-order, we believe. Hopefully it might potentially be this weekend.
Announced on Sunday.
Obviously, until you have a closer look at the Codex, it's really hard to justify these points at the moment, because you can't really say, is it worth the increase or worth the decrease to what you currently have? You're basing off an assumed Codex release. So with all due respect, I think it's worthwhile we kind of skip this. But just to rectify some of the points we said earlier, you can see on screen there, Abaddon is now 300 points. Hence why we were making the comparison with Guilliman earlier on. So you can kind of sort of see that on the screen. A couple of other things though that you can see there, so you can see all the troops, the elites, everything's there. Pause the screen as you wish. Obviously some of the stuff you see here might give a subtle hint as to what's coming in the codex if you've not been following the rumour mills already, but it's in front of you there to see, guys.
Yep. So yeah, a lot of stuff, things have been talked about. You'll get confirmation or ideas on, but yeah, it gives a lot away.
I think I need to hand the floor over to the Death Guard player, the only Death Guard player.
Pardon?
The only Death Guard player on the channel. So yeah.
True. Yeah. So as the area, I will probably know the best one. The thing I did notice first and foremost, and this is the most important one, is Plague Marines are 21 points no matter what they are upgraded with. Now, if you look at the Plague Marines beforehand, you said you thought the other guys had a lot of entries. These guys had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 things that they could pay points for previously, and now it is all free, which I think is really good. And the main reason for that is that if you're playing Plague Marines and you're wanting them to be, if you're going for cheap, they were just taking a bolt gun, and bolt gun and Plague Marine is pointless. Too many points. And if you want them to be more combat heavy, such as like the Mace Contagions or the Great Plague Cleaver, you're paying 10 points extra a model, really, to give them these weapons. And now you're not. Now, some of these I think is maybe a little bit odd to go, oh, don't worry, they're free. The Great Plague Cleaver may not be great because it's a bit inaccurate, but it does hit really hard. And then you've got I forget what they're called, the Flail of Corruption, you're paying 10 points before.
Yep.
By all accounts now, they are free, and that's going to open up people really playing Plague Marines a lot more. So I think that's quite good in regards to that as well. The only thing they've got to compete with is Poxwalkers. They went down in points by a point, I believe. I think they went from 6 to 5, yep. And a lot of people just took Poxwalkers because they were super cheap. But now you might be tempted to go, well, I'll take you into Plague Marines, Armour of Contempt and all that, and then I can add in Melt-A-Gun or other weapons inside there.
See, to be honest, looking at Plague Marines, I'd be loading them out just combat heavy for free.
Yeah, combat heavy, so take a 5-man squad, think of it this way, if you're taking a 10-man squad of Poxwalkers, it's 50 points, or a 5-man squad of Plague Marines, 100 points. But your Plague Marines will actually do more. It's about the same amount of wounds you're getting on there. It is double the points, essentially, but they will do something, and they are a lot more survivable.
Agreed. So,
we'll see on that one. The other things to note on there is a lot of their Terminators went down in points. Bit suspicious with Armour of Contempt, but okay. Folded Bloat Drone went down from 130 to 115. I am very happy with that. I do like a Folded Bloat Drone. I usually like them with Flesh more, so that's cool. And then the Playburst Crawler is now 135 points, which a lot of people said even previously, they were like, why is this continuously going down in points? And the main reason I'd probably say is that the Playburst Crawler is expensive as a damage dealer. It doesn't do the most damage. It does okay. The Mortar is a bit random, and then if you pay points to take the sort of entropy cannons, then it can do okay, but it is an absolute anvil unit. But other than that, it does struggle. So was it, I think that went down from 150 to 135, so that's a 15 point. Yeah. I'm not going to complain with it, but it was one of those ones I was a bit odd on that one.
I don't know. I think obviously I can't speak as a Death Guard player, but just from experience of playing the Playburst Crawlers, I don't think it needed to go down any further points at all. Don't get me wrong, you're fully right on the damage it deals, although I have seen entropy cannons ruin stuff before. But again, that's still a dice roll. You're right, the mortar is random. But the anvil ability of it, the fact that it can just tank for days, I think I've killed one Playburst Crawler tank in the entire 9th edition. That's how hard I've struggled to kill them. And I think when you've got something that sits and acts as a massive distract effects, 135 points seems a little cheap. But
The one thing I'd say is that the points you're paying for that is for the mortar, the wee gun on top of it, and the spears. Now, with this edition, where sure it can spew in combat with that stuff as well, at 135 points, if it's designed to get it up and close, I'd expect to do okay in combat. Like, not great, but okay in combat as well. Maybe crush things with its giant, shield wall thing. I can see it with the spears being 135 points, and then 150 with the entry cannon. Sure, it may be tough, but this edition has proved, I think, that depending on the ways that you are as tough as you are, sometimes just damage in this edition is like way higher, and you can be as tough as you want. Eventually, something will break you if you can't hit back. And Death Guard have struggled in this edition to hit back.
oh, they've definitely struggled to hit back. I agree with that. They've just not struggled to take a hit, in my opinion. To be honest,
Yeah.
right? You're totally right. They do one thing well, but they don't do everything well. They're not all-rounded force. They're only good at tanking. I fully agree with that. Well, they're good at attacking if a certain model that you're about to talk about next is on the field.
So yeah, Mortarion went down from 490 to 450, which is, about an 8% decrease, give or take, maybe 7 or 6. Either way, that's a big difference decrease, but I think we are just seeing that when you're putting nearly 500 points into a model, which an average 2,000 point game, that's nearly a quarter of your army. These big models, they may be hard to bring down, but they're not impossible to bring down, and just wait a fire if you know it's coming will bring them down quite quickly. So I don't totally disagree with that one. His shooting isn't particularly good, he's a little bit slower, and again, he is a warlord. You have to spend a command point to get 3 of its abilities. And again, we need clarification. If it comes to the case of you need to spend 3 command points to get those 3 abilities, one of them I would give up on straight away. I wouldn't be too bothered by it. Just the way I played, though technically the new updates might open me up a wee bit to it. But it's kind of like, again, 3 of his abilities come from warlord traits, and if you need to pay for them, that kind of makes me a bit suspicious. Do I think he's a 450 point model? Yeah, honestly, I think that's kind of fair. There's not many models that are now going to be in the 450 point range, especially ones that are designed for endurance and close combat. Some of the ones that are over that range point are ones that are ranged combatants, and overall ranged is a bit more deadly in 40k to a degree. So when he can't do anything at range, he's a bit of psychic, bit of quite very good in combat and endurance. 450 points I think is a fair price.
Yeah, I think I'm not disappointed with the points decrease at all, actually. I think the decrease sounds fair. He's certainly not had the Guilliman treatment where he was dropped from 490 maybe down to 410 or 400, but 450 seems about right. I think what he can achieve seems fair.
Guilliman's percentage difference was a lot more. I think that was over 20%. If he's 380 to 380, yeah, that's over 20%, versus this, which is probably around 6 or 7. So it's nowhere near as percentage difference between the two of them. But I think this one's a bit more of a fairer one. I think that's fine. Mortarion was seeing action, I think, because Death Guard actually has a lot more trouble in its range in general. And now you'll probably see him a bit more, and I think you'll see Playburst Crawlers more. But I think now that Plague Marines have now got their weapons a lot more free, it's going to open up, certainly for me, and I've got a lot of their weapons painted, I'm certainly going to consider, those weapons are definitely going to get used. It's almost a guarantee. I will have probably my troops, 3 of them, and they'll each have some weapons in them.
Fair enough. Well, we'll move on to World Eaters. Not much really to kind of shout out, because we're kind of had a lot of this leaked already. But Karn, 140 points, can't really complain. If he gets in combat, he's going to rip stuff up for days. And Berserkers at 22 points, that kind of falls in line with everything we've just seen with the Chaos Space Marine Codex. So, yeah, not much more to really touch on there. However, though, with World Eaters being something that will be up and coming, we believe, later this year, expect some further changes down the line for that sort of White Dwarf release when that comes. But we'll be talking about that White Dwarf release when it actually is released. Thousand Suns is something I was hoping to kind of touch on myself, Ross, if you don't mind. So, 1000 Suns, I'm just going to move on to the page for you all. Righty, so 1000 Suns, obviously I see, I won't talk about Adam just yet, I'm going to pass it on to yourself because some of the notes you mentioned is obviously linking them with Trajan. I want to kind of leave that for yourself to analyse. But there was something that I kind of wanted to point out, and I kind of fully agree, which was the Scarab Occult issue. And it's only from recent experience and actually playing in a game that will be released hopefully next week, which will feature Death Guard, 1000 Suns, and my Necrons in a 3-way battle. And Armour of Content is sort of highlighted in that quite a fair wee bit in that battle report, because also there's 2 Marine factions. But I was very shocked to see that Scarab Occult haven't really shifted. Now, don't get me wrong, they're already in the top tier of points for Terminators. If you look across all armies that have access to Terminators, I think they're coming in at, 40 points, I believe, is the recent addition. That's not including any upgrades, but 40 points a model. So you're on the high end already. But when you factored in Armour of Content, from my experience, it made them so ridiculously hard to shift along with their, is it Alta Dust, I think it's still called?
Yep.
All these sort of rules, Alta Dust, they are so tanky, and we're given even more tanky ability with Armour of Content. I believe the Armour of Content was going to put their points up, but that makes me believe that Armour of Content might not be kept. And this is the unit that's made me think that this is something we're playing just now. It's either going to be adapted to change the rule for a different way of doing Armour of Content when it's officially released, or it might be scrapped entirely. And I think this is one of the units that highlights the issue potentially with Armour of Contempt, is Scarab Occults, especially if they're not increasing the points to factor in something like Armour of Contempt. I don't know what you think on that, Ross.
As I said earlier, I think this was written without Armour of Contempt in mind.
I agree.
I think Armour of Contempt is something that they're trialling out to see where people... The simple fact is that some of the Space Marines, they've added rules to Space Marines because they're generic rule, and I'm not talking about Legion traits, I'm not talking about the one that adds AP and stuff. I mean, Space Marines originally as an army-wide rule, same as Reanimation Protocol. This is going back to the start of 8th edition, was, and they show no fear, and they just like re-rolled morale.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So they were like, oh, add in rules, add in Bolter Volley, add in Shock Assault, etc, etc. And I think Shock Assault might go away, same as that, you know, we've seen it not happen anymore for Death Guard or 1000 Suns. Is that like, oh, maybe it's a bit messy. And they are adding Armour of Contempt for more elite-based armies that are in power armour to make them more survivable, because ultimately AP is very, very strong. And I just think this was not written with that in mind, and you see a lot more of these endurance units really take a step up for Armour of Contempt. So for the purpose of Armour of Contempt, I think it's really good. Now, are they taking the points to consider it? I'm not sure. The one thing I would note on this one is if you look, for instance, the difference between Scarab Occult and, let's say, Assault Terminators. I think they're about 33 points for Assault Terminators, and these guys are coming in at 40 points. Now, I think Assault Terminators come in Lightning Claws as standard. I'm not 100% sure. Saying that one, even then I'll take other ones. There's not much of a price difference, but with Scarab Occult, you're getting a huge amount of survivability, you're getting a sorcerer, you're getting damage to weapons, you're getting bolters that are significantly better. There's just a lot more useful abilities in Scarab Occult.
I'll just
now,
I'll pop in something really quickly.
Yep.
Bear in mind, Assault Terminator, sorry, it's not Lightning Claws, they come as standard with Hammer Shield.
Well, Hammer Shield, then maybe
Yeah,
maybe that's a bit more fair on that side. But the point is that these are really good endurance unit that are good at ranged, because that bolter fire really does begin to add up. When you're just firing normal combo bolter at AP 0, who cares? AP -2 makes a difference. Makes a big difference. Yeah. And if you add on Wrath of the Wronged so that they get +1 to their wound, it really does make a difference. So Scarab Occult, I am a little bit surprised, but again, I think this was written before Armour of Contempt. That's the simple way to put it.
Last two sort of updates, obviously before I come to Magnus, some Legion command shifts changed down from about 5 points, which is fine. We're kind of seeing that across all these sort of additional rules in the codexes. And Magnus was also dropped along with his compatriot Mortarion, so Magnus has gone from 450 down to 420. I'm a Magnus fanboy, so he should be only 100 points, he shouldn't actually be 420. He should always be given a discount because he did nothing wrong. But hey, I'm not the one to decide that. But 420, it seems still, honestly, realistically about fair. Magnus can still achieve a lot in the battlefield for a Primarch, and Primarchs, in my opinion, should always be around about the 400 point mark anyway. I think they should be the low end of 400 points, not the top end, so 420 sounds about right to me. But the last point, though, was Ahriman, which is probably a unit you use quite a lot, Ross, is Ahriman.
Yeah.
But you made some interesting comparisons, so take it away.
Yeah, so, yeah, I sort of compared him to Trajan in a little way. He is, I think, Ahriman, once on his disc, is 180. Now, is he on the same level as Trajan? Maybe. I've achieved some great things with Ahriman.
Yeah.
I recently played a battle report and he absolutely destroyed. Well, I don't know if it's up yet. I won't say. It's not on our channel.
It's on War Drums and it's up because I watched it.
Is it? Alright, okay. I basically pushed the Swarm Lord right into the warp. I used Ahriman as a mobile mortal wound carrier, and he does that role well. He was then obliterated afterwards. I think he was killed afterwards. And it's simply put, Ahriman is very good at at psychic. He's actually not bad in combat either. His Black Staff is quite good, but he is not the most enduring unit, and he doesn't do any ranged, but he is quite pricey at 180. And I think that's kind of fair. He is very good at throwing those mortal wounds, mainly due to the Thousand Suns access to abilities. So yeah, I think it's fair. You know, he's remained the same. I could have seen him going up a little bit because he was kind of an auto-take character. He wasn't targetable, he was mobile, and given it a chance, he became a huge threat. But there is areas of weakness for him, so that's maybe why I thought, well, yeah, he stayed the same, because he does have weaknesses that he's not good at, but he is a very good character.
Yeah.
Very good.
Alright, I'll just quickly recap some of the next ones then that are coming up before we move on to probably the bigger changes. But we then have, I'll just slide on the update, so we move from Thousand Suns. Magnus and Reg, you can see they're 420. Right, so Chaos Demons. I think we're going to skip past this very, very quickly. We've not really taken time to have a look at that. Makes sense.
I did. It's pretty much exactly the same.
Well, there you go. However, I think we believe that Demons is still on the list of the next codexes to come out soon. So anything they were about to probably release is probably soon to be changed anyway.
There might be one or two changes there, but it was like so insignificant. I checked a lot of them, couldn't find any.
Cool. But yeah, they're on screen for you there, guys. Now this is my fault. I will say we've not had a chance to look at the Chaos Knights either, but I think you had a subtle look at them, not so many changes there, but you can see on the Chaos Knights.
I did look at them. I couldn't see any changes because I do have the codex, and didn't see any. Again, that's probably me theorizing that they probably like they'd worked on this and they just hadn't had a chance to really get what they wanted back for Chaos Knights, or they're maybe just really happy with Chaos Knights at the moment. Maybe they just don't feel like they want to commit to any points changes at the moment. That's kind of how I feel.
Well, it's on screen for you guys that want to see Chaos Knights. They are literally on the screen there. This is again fault on my part. I've not really taken time today to study the craft worlds, Harlequins, the Anrathi, the Inari, all that sort of stuff. There is actually so much, and if you can see from my screen here, as I screen all the way down, it is page after page after page before we get down to Necrons. But again, they're on screen here. If you do want to pause the video, you can see what the changes are. Yeah,
so I don't know craft worlds at all. It was mainly me that went over some points. I also don't have the craft world book, so I didn't really cover any of them. It's not an area I know. Drukhari, largely the same. I think the only thing was witches went down a point, but the rest of it is more or less the same. And I think simply is that Drukhari has been done quite well in this edition. They started off strong, and then they have got weaker as other forces came out. Yep. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know people like to shout power creep, and that does happen. But they have stayed relatively, I want to say, enjoyable to play. They are my favourite faction, though I don't currently play them. A lot of people seem to be very positive in them, so keeping their points relatively the same because the rules are staying the same seems okay. The only thing they were a bit, want to change is witches by point. That seems fine.
Fair enough. We will move on though to Necrons, something we can both discuss. I think also on the channel we've been recording Necrons quite a wee bit lately, so we've got some good hands-on experience with them. But with Necrons, I think I just want to start off really quickly and shout out probably the biggest change before any of the small subtle changes. Catans. And I don't know if this is something I agree with. As a Necron player, I'm very happy to see the points come down. Don't get me wrong, so Catans are basically 50 points cheaper. But I don't actually agree with it on principle. I think Catans, for the battlefield role that they fulfilled, the danger and threat they pose, they are Primarch level threats in my eyes. Yes, they don't have the stat line to make them comparable with Primarchs, but they have a tool chest of stratagems or abilities in the Catan phase, or war gear that makes them comparable. Like, for example, ignoring invuls, spamming d6 damage for days. They have essentially their own unopposed psychic phase, which I think is something that you'll forget quite a lot.
Unopposed psychic phases. People sometimes sleep on that, but it can make a difference. A lot more wounds they can put out, and you've got no way to stop them.
Yeah, you can't interfere with it. So that to me is free damage. I think they were very well pointed already, and the fact, we're not even touched on it yet, they don't lose, they only lose 3 wounds a phase, which is a huge potential issue about to come into this new edition. However, that 3 wounds a phase is such a huge, powerful rule to bully your opponents off the tabletop. The points they were at before, I agreed with. I felt it was fine. It was, if you brought up Catan, you're paying the tax, and that felt fair to me. Now they're down in points, it's almost making them an auto-include now in every single list that you're going to face against Necrons. If I'm against a Necron player, I'm going to automatically assume there's a Catan kicking about now.
I'm near enough going to assume that the Nightbringer might make appearance. 300 points is a big investment. That's the same points as a Primarch, Gilman. Or a bad. So it does, and I think the Nightbringer was 320.
It's 320, and the other 2 are 300.
Yeah, and the I don't rate the other ones as much. The fact they lose 3 wounds turn makes them a pain, but the Nightbringer just can, I think he's got so many abilities to cause damage that bully away across the field. If your opponent is prepared for them, they can deal with them. If they've not prepared for them, they can just be a pain. I have lost games just because Catans have floated into the middle of the field and they have ignored invul saves. If they get a good charge off in certain areas, and if you don't work out how to maneuver, to avoid them, but really if you can sit them in the middle, if you're not fully prepared for them, then you're going to lose the center because, well, you try and shoot them, you try and charge, you try and take them in combat. You can only cause 6 wounds. If you've got no psychic ability, then it's really hard to find the wounds in either the charge phase, the movement phase, or the command phase.
I think we should also say really quickly, we're forgetting, we're just naming the named Catans, by the way, Ross.
The Transcendent one as well.
230 points is the Transcendent one. The Transcendent one basically is still an absolute beast that can only lose 3 wounds a phase.
I don't know, I've never fielded the Transcendent one. I just look at the Nightbringer and go, sure, you're a pain in the ass.
The Transcendent one, no one ever took it before because people were like, I might as well pay the extra attack for the extra buffs that the other 3 give you. But the Transcendent now, to me, only 230 points, still does d6 damage, -4, has access to the stratagem to ignore invuls, -4 AP, 5 attacks basic, is pretty much similar to other Catans, albeit it doesn't have its own unique Catan power or its own unique weapon, but it's still an absolute beast that can only lose 3 wounds a phase at 230 points. That's mental. I can field something with that power at 230 points.
Yep. I'd have to look at things to make a comparison to, but yeah, they are dangerous creatures. They've been one of those things that people haven't fielded because Necron players, I feel, prefer different kind of units, things that, I know Reanimate's not a big thing, but there's different law of endurance units you can use.
Yeah.
But as a bully unit, one that just goes up the field and your opponent does have to think about, then it has been quite good.
Yeah, I think this is one of the changes I have to call out. I'm not happy. I don't agree with. I'm happy that it's happened, but I don't agree with it.
I think the Necrons in general is that their problem isn't entirely their points, is that their Codex was the first one that came out for this edition. It needs another wee bit of focus behind it, and I will get that in time.
Further to Necrons, you've got a couple of points drops across the board. I can't really speak much for the Hex Mark. We don't really use the Hex Mark. We don't even own a Hex Mark. but that's
Not
down.
got one. It did okay. He's got some nasty tricks on it.
Fair enough. I think Ledgeguard was a big one, Ross.
Ledgeguard 3 points is fine. Tomb Blades down from 25 to 20 is a very interesting one. Tomb Blades I always thought were quite a good unit. Incredibly mobile. I think they've got a natural -1. And I think that you have to put in points to take their guns and things, so that you're just paying that for the stats itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, 20 points for a Tomb Blade, and they've got fairly good stats. I think they're 20 points, about the same points as an Intercessor, but a Tomb Blade moves so much faster. It's got a bit more toughness on it, and it's got a natural -1. So, it doesn't have a weapon like an Intercessor at that point, but it's 5 points down a model. That's an interesting option for Necrons.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think you've mentioned as well, Lord of War's down in points. Obelisk, I think it's coming in at 300 points, bringing it basically on par now with a Monolith. I know this.
Obelisk, Obelisk, again, the rules are just awful. They've struggled with Obelisk for a long time.
I know it's not really what we're discussing today, but just a wee tag on, I wouldn't mind to see if the Monolith gets the Land Raider Toughness 9 treatment eventually at some point. I'd love to see it get that. I think it deserves it. Especially if a Land Raider gets Toughness 9, the Monolith should be Toughness 9.
Sure.
Because we're now about to go into the world of Toughness 9.
9 at the moment, David.
Sorry?
That's just rumours at the moment.
That's what I'm saying, yes, and if it happens, I'd like to see the Monolith get the Toughness 9.
Sure. Rumours.
Orcs I'm not going to touch on, but would you mind having a wee chat? Because I think you've got the book, you've got the codex.
I do. I only know by certain things I know in Orcs. Orcs have struggled in a wee bit of way. People haven't been entirely happy with them. But the main thing I saw that was a bit odd is the Beast Boss on Squigsor went down in points, about 15. People said that the Beast Boss on Squigsor was quite good, so I was a bit surprised by that. A lot of the Orc infantry, like the majority of it, Beast Snaggers, Boys, Tank Busters, everything, a lot of them went down by a point each. So all your boys, a whole ton of them down a point, is an interesting one, with Gretchen going up 1 point. I think it's just they really don't want you to really field Gretchen so much.
Fair enough.
Now, having all the boys go down, I think boys are down to, I want to say 9 points, and Beast Snaggers are 10 points. I'd have to have a look at that at the moment.
Boys are 8 points.
Pardon?
8 points for a boy.
So a boy is 8 points and Beast Snag is 10 points. At that point level, again, you're getting to a really cheap level that you might want to flood the field. 8 points for a unit that does hit hard in combat. Now, it doesn't have much survivability, though toughness 5. Gets that point when you're going to start thinking, do I just flood the field with boys? You can get 100 boys for 800 points, 200 of them for 1,600. And that's a pain to move. They're toughness 5, not toughness 4. And AP in this game is insane already. That you'd be like, cool, I'm never going to get a save, but I've got 200 wounds for you to move.
Yep.
And if again combat, I can chop stuff up as well.
Could be the return of the Green Tide again, because it certainly disappeared, so...
Who knows? I'm only saying, but generally, it seems like there was a desire to put down the points of Orc boys. You couldn't do it by much, because they were already cheap. If they went down to 7 points, or they were never getting to 6, because there would be 1 more point than a guard, and that's ludicrous.
No, they'd be the same point as a guard and a cultist.
They would be the same point as a point, and that's just ludicrous.
Chance,
at toughness 5, and then with their goodness amount of attacks with a chopper, no.
8 seems about right.
But, I think they're incentivizing you. You could take a lot more. If you got 50 boys, that's 50 points cheaper. If you take 100, it's 100 points cheaper. You get the idea.
Cool. Right, moving on. We're going to scroll on down to the Tao Empire.
So this is maybe the 2 areas that are the most, very ending, the T's, Tau and Tyranids.
Yeah.
2 areas where we knew there was going to be changes.
Do you want to take it away with Tau to start with?
Sure, I'll do Tau. So when it comes to Tau, I was a bit surprised, mainly because it's not my play style, but the Ethereals went all up in points, and I must imagine it's just because their abilities must be very good. They're not good in range, they're not really good in combat, but they do offer abilities, so there must be combinations there that have really shown Ethereals for their points really do offer more. So cool, understand that. All Battlesuit Commanders went up by 10 points. Don't know how I feel about that. I've done some nasty stuff with Battlesuit Commanders. I think they are really good. The Honor got, I think there's various relics that work well with Commanders. Now you have to pay a command point. But the Honor Guard Gauntlet turns them into an absolute combat king, along with the Warlord trait that allows you to reroll all hits and wounds. That applies to both shooting and combat. Yeah, the Battlesuit Commanders can be really, really good. So they went up by 10 points, but fair. Crisis Suits was the big one I think everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
Now, they've gone from, up from I think 30 points to 40 points, and they've made Bodyguard Crisis Suits the same, because they must have realised the 5-point difference was really not warranted. So, yeah, will that make the biggest change in the world? I'm not entirely sure. It is going to cost a lot more points. If people were fielding whole army of Crisis Suits, which I don't think they were, but they're fielding them in higher numbers, it is going to have an impact. So, we'll see. I think Crisis Suits are good units, and I think now the 40-point range start with, and then their upgrades on top of it, there's going to be a little bit of reckoning on that one. I think some people are going to be very annoyed, but Crisis Suits, I think, we're on the verge of becoming a problem. So there was certainly a point increase happening there. Should have been 5 points, should have been 10 points, should have been 20, I don't know. I play Tau sporadically. Probably we're going to see some interesting reactions to that one. But yeah, we knew they were going to go up in points. They were never going to stay the same.
I agree. I think Crisis Team, again, I don't think I've seen many being spammed, but from what I have seen battle reports online and from what Jamie on the channel has mentioned about Crisis Teams, they've been very effective when used. So much so that I always like to think, am I getting, when I'm putting a unit in the field, is it going to kill enough points to warrant me fielding it? Is it going to get its points back? And I've not really heard Crisis Teams failing to obliterate stuff off the table. They seem to overkill things. 40 points seems about right, because I think I like to think Crisis Teams as Terminators.
You need the weapons on top of that,
yeah, that is true.
So it does become expensive.
But when I think of them as Terminators have a lot of combi bolter stuff, right? I get that. So they are the same points as Crisis Suits, but their guns aren't as powerful. I still think you do more damage with Crisis Suits, and that's why you're paying the tax on the guns still, because their guns can be absolutely terrifying. And with the new Marker Light ability, in my opinion, which combos incredibly well now with your units in the shooting phase, because it's no longer sort of that table of abilities. Just here, put it on some units and get +1 to hit. That can be huge for Crisis Teams. 40 points I feel is about right. The only thing I do notice though when I look at the Crisis Teams, and this is the Bodyguards as well, sorry, when I'm saying this I'm meaning both units I should say, is I don't believe the 40 points per model is a problem. I think that's pretty fair. It's some of the weapon upgrades. So I've seen units where it's the same gun on a unit. For example, I can't remember the example in the Space Marine Codex, but you've got the same unit, sorry, a different unit, but you're going to upgrade the same gun, like last cannons, for example. I've seen units where a last cannon is 20 points, but another unit is 5 points. The war gear is the same weapon profile, but the unit you're taking on determines how much that weapon costs. Now, I think the weaponry that you're paying for in these Crisis Suits is a little bit high in some regards. That's where my issue comes in with the Crisis Team points.
It's a bit all over the place. There's a big thing to talk about this when it comes to how armies are organised in general, I feel, is that they go, I think they sort of incentivize you to take different weapons on different parts of the suit, and that feels really messy. I've seen people in competitive lists I've had a look at, they take different weapons only because the points incentivize them to not spam, because they know they don't want people going, just take loads of plasma on the same model. Frankly, I'd prefer you do, maintain multiple weapons just for the sake of points, but some people do. It's an interesting one. We've also got the problem that we're seeing that, I think we saw it more in the Death Guard than any other book so far, where they said, you can only upgrade this unit as it comes in the box. Now, I don't know if that was the effect on Crisis Suits, I don't think it was, but that's the sort of feel I get, and I really don't like that attitude. So to give you an example, in Death Guard, is that you can only take, I think, when you take the special weapon upgrade, some people will want 2 plasma weapons in a 10-man squad. They go, no, you can only take like 1 melt or 1 plasma because that's what comes in the box. Something like that. It's really, really weird way of writing the books at the moment, and I don't like it. And I feel that's a weird way of doing Crisis Suits. It's not in the same vein, but it just feels weird. I think they're just going, we don't want you to spam stuff, and they're like, cool, we'll go the cheapest route possible, but we're still going to spam lots of stuff. and then it gets messy.
Yeah. Well, that's my only 10 pence for Crisis. I think that the weapon points needs to be changed a little bit. Rethunk. 40 points though seems about fair, just not the point that upgrades.
The next part I want to go into is broadsides went up by points and 10 points, and that's fine. Storm Surge went from 330 points to 400 points. Now, they may have not changed the Knight stuff as much, but Knight players were complaining very recently about Storm Surge. Simply put, they were like, we're paying 400 to 500 points a model versus the Storm Surge at 330, minus I think weapons and stuff on top of it. And they were like, the Storm Surge, if you're going by several turns, will shoot a Knight off the field usually. If a Knight manages to reach it, it'll obliterate it, but it was the key of, can it make it there?
Yep.
So it's a huge point increase for the Storm Surge. That's 70 points. That's a big one.
I instantly disagree with
that is over 20% increase right there.
Yeah, I instantly disagree with the points increase because for the simple fact of basically the following. You're capped at how many Storm Surges you're going to be able to field. Let's not kid ourselves here. A Knight player, you've got a lot of Storm Surges. You're bringing multiple Storm Surges to the field that can do good at everything except Psychic. We get that. But they can shoot well, and they can do combat well, and they can maneuver well. Right, they can get around the field. Storm Surge, not so much. Now don't get me wrong, a Storm Surge can easily obliterate a Knight off the field in one turn. If you're taking that particular cannon, and you're taking that particular faction called Borkan, and you're also using that particular stratagem in Borkan. So basically you're putting all your eggs in one basket though. That's what you're doing. So it's one particular playstyle, and I get why Knights players are annoyed, but it's all your eggs in one basket, and you're limited to one Storm Surge, really. Let's not kid ourselves. I'm saying you're not actually limited to one, but as per the new command point structure, you're not going to bring another one and pay additional CP now. It's just not worth it. So you're only going to have one. And see, once that Storm Surge is finally shut down, it's game over. 330 points, maybe 350 points. I'd say maybe 350 points. But 400, no chance.
Does that include the weapons on top of it?
Storm Surge. Let me bring up the Storm Surge really quickly.
Nah, you gotta pay. The points are relatively cheap though, to be honest.
So Storm Surge, yeah, the points aren't dear. The points are dear. You're probably... Yeah, so if you want to bring the crazy cannon, you're per the current version, you're 340, so you're now 410. If you want to bring in other upgrades, you're probably about 420, 425 at tops.
Yeah.
But still, you're telling me now that this thing is the same points as Magnus.
Well, think of it this way, right? You've got the Knight Rampager, which is like 400 points. It only does one job well: get in combat. That's it.
Yeah, but
it's got to get there. Versus this, doesn't need to get there. It needs to sit down and fire. So I could see the anger, especially on the Rampager side. The Rampager can be an absolute lethal machine. Can do far more damage than this, but it needs to get there, and that's the big difference.
But Knight players can kit out Knights to just sit and shoot as well. It's called the Castellan type robot.
Oh,
Let's get arguably more guns though.
Yeah, but no one likes them. They're not good.
I understand, but
there's other better ones in terms of what they can do and shoot.
There are plenty of Knights that you can kit out a loadout and still decimate, fire back in return. You could probably kit out a Knight and still blow a Storm Surge off the field, as equally as a Storm Surge can blow a Knight off the field.
I would have to do the math on that one, David. I can't tell you on that one. It's more for the points, in terms of 330 points was maybe a little bit low.
I agree with that, and I think 350 sounds about right. And then when you factor in the upgrade, you're about 365, 370. That to me sounds like a really fair Storm Surge. But to tell me 400
Tao
plus...
players probably say one thing, we'll see the Knight players say another.
I play both.
Well...
I play both, and I can see both sides. But
right,
I also think, though, Knight players are complaining about an isolated incident. For example, the Storm Surge, if you're against Knights in your Tau, you're not going to not bring a Storm Surge, because it's really your best arsenal to kill a Knight. But if your opponent brings, for example, like a mass horde army of some sort, or lots of multiple pieces of armor, like Astra Militarum, Storm Surge is actually not the best way to go, because its gun's only going to kill like one tank. But if you bring lots of multiple tanks and spread out, you're probably better going Crisis Teams, Hammerheads, Broadsides than a Storm Surge to give you that spread of firepower.
I was facing Tyranids, and they had the invol thing before it got updated, before the codex got up. I didn't bring a Storm Surge, I brought Hammerheads. I know people were like, oh, don't bring Hammerheads. It worked a treat.
Yeah.
Hammerheads were, if you're facing big things and you know it, like the Hammerheads, that was a bit of a bad move of me. I brought them in Ghost Skills, worked amazing.
So it's an isolated thing. I can see where they complain, but I don't believe Storm Surge is actually the problem everyone thinks it is. It's a problem for two factions, and that's it.
Sure.
Right, so we'll move on to Tyranids. We'll both cover this one. And I think me as a Tyranid player, but Ross, you've been using Tyranids and faced against Tyranids quite consistently recently on the channel and on other channons. So you have a lot of hands-on experience. But we'll kick off with the first sort of change. I'll just move, though, if you don't mind, down to Tyranids. There we go. Swarm Lord. So Swarm Lord's gone up in points. So I believe it's now 240. 240, let me bring up. Yeah.
So I believe all the
240.
Tyrant ones, the Hive, the Winged one, the Swarm Lord, all up 20 points.
Yeah. So that all felt fair to me. I've got no issues with that because Tyrants are already an absolute struggle to kill sometimes, potentially. So Swarm Lord being up, he's an absolute beast. He's meant to be their sort of, I wouldn't say he's a Guilliman-esque or Primarch-esque, but he's meant to be their sort of as close as you can get to that sort of character in their codex. So I fully agree with the 240 points. That sounds pretty fair to me. Other Tyrants going up, I think the only one I'd maybe say maybe 200 points would be the Winged Hive Tyrant, mainly because his winged were clipped, because you can only take one of them now. As before old editions, you would just spam as many as you possibly could. Then yes, they were a problem. One isn't so much a problem as people consider it to be. I think there's other units in the codex now which are more of a problem, which we're going to come on to, which went up in points. Exocrine is the one I'm going to shout out. So, but they have gone up in points. I just think maybe the Winged Hive Tyrant, just keep it at 200, sounded a bit fine. But hey, 210, it's not the end of the world. Won't really complain too much. This is one that I personally don't agree with too much. I think the Tyrannid Warriors were very nicely pointed at 25 points. 30 points, I don't think it's the end of the world personally for fielding, because you tend to bring them in units of 3, so 90 points for 3 of them, not including upgrades. Fair enough, okay, it's not the end of the world. I think 25 points is a really good place for them. 30 points, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not saying it's the end of the world.
Fair enough.
This is one I think maybe you want to kind of chime in. I disagreed with this off camera. I think Death Leaper was quite well pointed where it was at 95 points, but I think you disagreed. 120 points.
Only from things I've seen online, a lot of people saying that Death Leaper, he wasn't necessarily an auto take, but he was a very good unit. Maybe a little bit too good for his points. At 120, that possibly might be a little bit too expensive. Certainly between 10 point, anywhere between the 100 to 110 point mark, I would have said fine. 120, yeah, sure. He was seeing good use. It wasn't like it was an auto take. If it's an auto take unit, then you'd expect a point increase of anywhere between 10 to 20%. So this one going up quite a bit more than that. It's nearly, I think, a 33% increase, give or take. 25% increase, give or take. That's a lot for a single model. Now, I've not used Death Leaper in this edition, and I've not faced it either, so I can't say. But I did see rumblings of people going, it's a little bit cheap.
So, don't get me wrong, Death Leaper, it can clearly annoy people. And I can see why people are annoyed at it. It's got a lot of attacks, they're all damage 2. It's very efficient in combat. It's mainly, in my opinion, the issue where people struggle with the Death Leaper is it's what its impact it has on the board, not necessarily in combat, 'cause it's only going to do anything in combat damage wise. It's the amount of time and the amount of points you invest into trying to shoot it off the field. That's the real problem with it. It's quite easy to drop it in and hide it. It's automatically got a -1 to hit it. Because it's also a character, you can kind of position it really well so the thing can't even be targeted. However, when it gets into combat, don't get me wrong, it is going to hit you, and it will hit you hard because it hits you at strength 7, 2 damage, but it has 0 invul and only has a 4-up save. So if you can, in my opinion, it's a 1 round and done in the combat. When it finally catches you, it'll either annihilate you or it will have failed to, and as long as you've got something that can chew through its AP, it's dead. And I tend to shy away from bringing Death Leaper. I tend to just spam Lictors, because they're not as good as Death Leaper, but they seem to achieve a similar effectiveness on the tabletop for way cheaper points. They seem to do what Death Leaper does, not as well, but similarly, but for less points. And they're always a pain. I always think you use your Lictors mainly as a distraction or to shut something down. That's really all they do. But Death Leaper, again, if he charges the wrong unit and fails to kill in combat, it is dead. It will get glass hammered out of existence.
Yep.
So I think 120 points, maybe 100 points would sound quite reasonable. But yeah. Next one is Maleceptor.
We all knew this was coming. Like, this was massively coming.
Yeah, pretty much anything that was a monster, right? If it was a monster, it was getting so much advantages of survivability in the new codex. And
Maleceptor became a problem, I think, in various... It was beginning to... People were working ways to really throw out stupid levels of mortal wounds with them. I've heard of people taking 3 in a list and just going absolutely rampant with them, along with neurothropes and stuff. So everyone knew this was getting a big point increase.
I don't disagree with this at all. I think 170 to 220, so it's 50 points, which is a large increase, but I'm of the if it's in this codex and it's got the monster keyword, it's going to get a huge points update, regardless. So that's anything else you want to add to that? Because I think that's a fair increase. I've got nothing wrong with that at all. I think 220 sounds about right. It'll probably limit players.
I think a few people who spent quite a bit of money again, 3 Maleceptors might be annoyed, or they might be just leaning into it, but 50 point increase, people were using 3 of them, that's 150 points, you're going to have to take out somewhere to put into them again.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed with it. I think it's going to cap you to only bring in like 1 per army, which, by the way, seems fair. Sure, fair enough. Next one, I just think stupid Pyrovores. 40 points a model now. I think they still come in units of 3. I could be wrong.
I think this is an area that we can't really speak on this one. We saw Pyrovores and Ravenors go up. Pyrovores by 10 points, Ravenors by 5 points. What I saw with Pyrovores is that apparently you can deep strike them in. They can be a bit of a pain in the ass. And Ravenors, I mean, they're fine, but they're just low damage in terms of just doing damage 1. There may be areas we're just missing on that one. We were both a bit surprised by that, but, you know, let us know in the comments what you guys think of those two, what's going on there that we've missed.
So I think they can only deep strike in if you make them, I think it's Jormungandr.
Yeah, or you take the thing and you deep strike them in. Yeah. And, but...
And also, if you look at their stat line, though, it's... I don't know if you're looking at it just now, but for their flamers, it's just not good.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not good, and you're now 40 points for that flamer unit. You can put those points elsewhere, probably instantly, if you're a Nids player. Sorry. Another one that went up, which I again don't agree with, was Ravenors, 30 to 35 points. I would rather just take more warriors now than I would Ravenors. Ravenors were already a difficult one to decide to even take. I've used them a few times and they've yet to achieve anything, even when they were already cheaper than 30 points. Don't get me wrong, they're going to zip around the table, they're going to get objectives, they're going to cover ground really fast, but this is one of the things I said in my review of the Tyrannus Codex, was they've exchanged a lot of multi-damage in combat to damage 1 and said, right, we're going to give you damage 1, but here's more attacks. So does that sort of balance it out? We'll give you less damage, but we'll give you more attacks. That's better, isn't it? And I'm of the consensus that that's wrong. It's actually a worse trade-off. I would rather have the damage in this edition right now than have lots of damage 1. To me, damage 1 still has its place, but it's really not finding a place for this particular unit anymore. And I think 35 points is really dear for this unit. I would just say warriors. Just bring warriors. More warriors. Or flesh out your existing warrior unit to max capacity.
So the next one I am guilty of is I use Tyrannifex and Acid Spray. Acid Spray went up in points. I really like it. The Acid Spray has done me well. If you're finding the right kind of opponent, it can do well. So I wasn't entirely surprised by that one. I prefer it over the Rupture Cannon.
No spoilers coming, but we recently used that and a battle report there, and that acid spray absolutely terrifies me.
Yep.
Battle report's still to come out, but that acid spray is absolutely terrifying. Is it 2 damage a piece?
2 damage piece.
Brilliant.
2d6 automatic hits, I think.
Yes.
Strength 6, AP -2.
Super efficient for what it achieves. Great in Overwatch, great in shooting. It's assault, so
Thank
you
you.
can...
Don't think it's an assault. It might be actually. Acid spray. No, it's not. It's a heavy d6 plus
okay.
6. So you're getting d6. You're getting 6 shots automatically, and d6 range 18, which is an AP -3. Those are the 2 things that make a difference. Range 18, and you're already moving quite fast. Automatic hits means you are getting the midfield quite well.
Great. If you're locked in combat, that opponent's going to have to take a spray in the face and the limbs. It's a lot to deal with. So I'm not disappointed that's going up in points. It still makes Tyrann effects as affordable still, though. It's not priced it out. Exocrines. I'm very guilty of spamming Exocrines. They're almost every single list I do. I usually take 2 of them. And that's because their firepower is... They've got less shots than they used to, but their damage has gone up. Their strength, I think, has gone up. Their AP's gone up. A much more efficient unit. So 200 points in Exocrine actually sounds fair. I hate to say it, but their damage output potential is massive. And they can ignore cover as well if they stay still. So yeah, 200 points sounds a bit fair to me. So gone up by 30 points in total. And then Ross, do you want to touch on the Harpies?
So the Harpy going up 15 points, I'm not entirely sure if that's enough. The Harpy was an incredible unit for its cost, and 100, what is it now, 175? Suppose you've got to pay 15 points per heavy venom cannon, which brings it to the 200 point mark. So yeah, that seems about fair maybe, but they are really good with those heavy venom cannons, and I don't want to push it to above 200 points, but it's... The heavy venom cannons are so good. You're getting 6 shots from them, and they can absolutely rip stuff apart. 4. Damage 4, yeah, strength 9. Yeah,
-3, I think now as well. AP -3 as well, I think. So very efficient weaponry.
So you're putting 6 of those shots out. Yeah, very efficient. And I agree with it going up in points. Is that enough? I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like that's pushing it to the 200 point mark after upgrades. So 200 points, nothing to say no about.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's not like it can take objectives or anything like that. It's essentially, if you're playing a 2,000 point game, a 10th of your force, that can cause the damage, but it's not going to contribute in other ways of the game as well. It's not going to provide... Well, it can throw spores about, it can do a bit of combat, but not much, against other flyers like aircraft vehicles, and it's not going to control objectives. So you've got those heavy venom cannons, that's kind of it, and it's maneuverable.
No,
and I may say only, it is still a good unit.
Well, I think there's some other things we could touch on, but we're not going to really stress about. But you've got Genestealer Cult in there, which I think there's relatively minimal, if any, sort of changes. And obviously your fortifications. So I'll leave the Genestealer Cult screen on there for you Genestealer players. But that brings a sort of... Well, I was hoping for a wee short overview. We've actually now been on this for over an hour. So we've kind of reviewed quite a fair bit of the points changes, Ross. I think overall, a lot of positive stuff, a few negatives. This is obviously something that's going to come around every year. They're trying to rebalance it, for example. But I think a couple of key ones for me just to finish on. Happy with the Primarch drops. They sound fair. Not so happy, if I'm being honest, with some of the increases on things like the Storm Surge. But as an overall, I'd say a very positive change to the point system so far. Don't know what your thoughts are on that.
So, I'm never too bored about the points changes. I'm very much gamers. I'm going to play what I want to play. The main thing I thought was important is that they have brought back digitalized points in there. So, at the start of 9th edition, I say start, it was probably did their first chapter approved, and then they realised that there was a lot of points changes needed. And I think between October and February, give or take, 2020 to 2021, the points were up on PDF for free. And I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. And then they said, we're bringing another chapter approved book out with all the points. And I was like, don't get rid of the points online. And they did. And I thought it was a huge mistake. And I did berate Games Workshop quite a wee bit, saying I think that's a mistake. You shouldn't do this. People just had ease of access of getting all the points anyway. It just puts them in one location that's simple and easy to find. Yep. And I'm glad finally Games Workshop have seen that, yeah, okay, let's just embrace this. You know, it must have been after Custodes when they realised they published the book and then like a few days later they changed all the points. That they just need to embrace the digital age. You can get ease of access to your customers to make their points, especially if they play multiple forces like us. It makes it so much easier for us to just observe them. And it means you can change points when needed very, very easily. There's no big books for it. You don't need to, you can go, right, something isn't working. They can change it and the updates are there in one location very, very simply. They did this a while back and then they stopped, and I thought it was a stupid idea that they stopped, and now they're doing it again. So I've got to praise them for that they have brought it back, because it was a good idea and they're doing it again, and it'll just make everything a lot easier for people.
Well, I'll bring it to a close by chiming off by saying thank you to Games Workshop for sending us this free copy, to sort of have a look at these ahead of time of the announcement that you've just seen today, and allowing us sort of time to kind of formulate our thoughts and have a wee look at it and provide them with some feedback as well of how we sort of feel the points are going. So thank you, Games Workshop, but more importantly, thank you for joining us on this sort of roundup of the points with me and Ross today. Check us out in the links down below for all our social media updates. Please check us out for the upcoming battle reports. But more importantly, we hope to see you on another one of our Tabletop Assault Battle Reports.